Hello, everyone.
Okay.
Welcome to the Ultra Human Corner. Today is a special day because, well, I have 300 followers, and I think that's amazing. And I'm interviewing Talviyö. If you guys can't tell, I'm just nervous. I'm just gonna say it. So let's get it. Now, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Talvio. I'm an Arctic wolf Therian myself. I've been awakened for just about 4 years now, and a part of the community for about 4 years as well.
So let's get started with the questions. I kind of want to take this into account, guys. There's not a lot of content creators out there. So when there are content creators, I really like to watch their content. And let me just be honest, there's nothing out there for me to watch. So having someone that makes content is just amazing. So how did you find out you were a Therian?
Um, that's kind of a hard question to answer. There were tons of different components. I remember I learned about the term Therian in I want to say like late elementary school or maybe early middle school. Um, and it was right before the pandemic. It was July 2019 that I really started to sort of look inside myself, figure out who I was, and figure out that, hey, this term describes me. I think I'm Ethereum.
I feel like a lot of Therians found out, well, I know I did. I found out I was a Therian literally right after the pandemic in 2020. And my parents thought like
Hmm.
it had something to do with the pandemic. I'm like, no, it didn't.
Yeah, it seems to be a common story. I see so many people, especially on Instagram now, I see so many people mentioning that they were awakened in either 2020 or 2021. I guess it's one good thing that came out of the pandemic, since we were being so much inside, we had so much time to sort of think about ourselves and reflect on who we are.
I totally agree with that. But here's the question I am dying to know because like I just feel like I want to take this into account that there aren't a lot of content creators, and I wish my fans, could see like the time and effort that, as content creators put in there. But what made you want to create content?
Oh gosh. What made me want to create content was a combination of necessity and boredom. The I joined at a time when TikTok was on top of the world. And obviously, we know how I feel. A lot of people know how I feel about Therians on TikTok, especially the quadrobics content. And I noticed there were still, obviously, there are some people like Honora Fallon was still around at this time. There was PD, there was Therian Territory, but there wasn't so many educational Therian content creators out there. There weren't people who were talking about what it really meant to be Ethereum. And there weren't people properly expressing all aspects of it either, especially dysphoria and the struggles that Therians can go through. I felt there was some necessity for me. I felt some form of like responsibility, especially because of the fact that I was a bit older than most people who were joining the community at the time, and also given the fact that I think I was like 15 or 16 at this time, and I had just started like a part-time job and I had nothing to do. So the boredom also was was an aspect of why I started creating content.
Personally, I feel like on TikTok, like when I find an adult like Therian or an adult content creator that is a Therian, I just go, wow. Like because on TikTok, I am on TikTok, but not for the reasons you would think. Basically just to doom scroll because that's my problem. But I see so many younger people on TikTok, like younger Therians that are posting quads content. And I know how quads
Hmm.
became a thing. And I don't diss it as much. I just feel like there should be more information. And there is now, but like you can get very famous for posting a quads video on TikTok and YouTube and wherever, even maybe Instagram. But if you actually make content that I feel like is more valuable, you get less fame and less noticed.
Yeah, and there are plenty of reasons because of that, or there are plenty of reasons for that. I don't know if we have time to go into all of them, but it's definitely a phenomenon that I've noticed even outside of the Therian community as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't diss quads. I just I I've seen the points people say to me all the time, like, don't you feel bad because of this? And I'm like, yeah, I kind of do at times, but I feel like I'm benefiting, like I'm trying to help the cause. And also, none of these adults nowadays, they don't want to do it. They have their own lives and they're probably busy, like PD.
Absolutely.
How do you feel about your theory and journey?
Um, well, I mean, I say this every time I reach any kind of milestone. It has been a hell of a ride from discovering this myself to starting to post things about it. It's just been it's been wild. And I've made a lot of friends because of it. I've also lost a lot of friends because of it. Um, but you know, that's life. What can you do? And it's been a wild journey, but I really wouldn't trade it for anything.
I feel like it's different how people take it, but I call it like a story. Like I feel like Therians, they have their own story. Like if you have an awakening or what happens to you, it's like a story.
Absolutely.
What's your end goal in making Therian content?
Um, my end goal is really two things. I want to help the community. I want to help people who are newer to the community learn and have accurate information. And sort of going off that, also to sort of reintroduce to this community ideas of creating better informational content, doing practices like citing your sources and making sure doing deep research before you post about something. And the other thing is I want to bring the community together. My biggest goal is to sort of, because I think the community is sort of being divided right now, especially by quadrobics. There's being a split of some people are going into the more sort of visual aspect of this community and posting about it purely because of the I hate this word, but because of the aesthetic, like the quadrobics content, the tails, the masks, what have you. And then there's the more quote unquote old school content creators, say Thorn or PD, who are trying to do more educational content. And I'm trying to sort of bridge the gap between the two to create to sort of create a space where everyone feels unified.
Well, I will say, like, I hope this is relatable, but before me, there was only one other podcast out there, and I don't even think they still post. I think they did like there was like a group of them. Um, but like no one in the podcast, well, nowadays it's different, but nobody in the theory and podcasting community, when I say like there aren't a lot of podcasters, I mean like people will just decide to start something and then they'll quit. And they'll either leave out their content or they'll make a goodbye video because they have to or they need to, or they will literally ghost their fans, which if you have to ghost, like, okay, do it. But, it's really not a good thing to get into a habit of. And that's really what happened. So for me, like, after I started making this podcast, like, I felt like other people kind of got the same ideas and started doing it. But I kind of really want to um let people understand that there are a lot of younger people nowadays that want to make content like me. And yes, I did start at a young age, and I really don't recommend doing that, but you might get in trouble for that. I mean, I really didn't because, well, I'm 18 now and they were like okay with it. But like a lot of these younger people, they start at something and then their parents tell them you can't do that and or like it's just not a good thing to do and to get into a habit too and like the community has turned to that.
Absolutely, I completely agree. I see people getting um, millions and millions of views, these like 12, 13-year-old kids, and I kind of feel bad for them in a way. Like it's hard for you to understand that level of fame and the consequences that come with that level of being so well known at that age. It's it's really an unfortunate circumstance.
I have been in the community for about 4 years, and it was hard for me because I watched the community change. When I walked into the community, I saw all of these videos and stuff on YouTube. And then, like a couple years later, it was all quads content. And nowadays, I don't even want to look up the word Therian. And I do time to time just to find other content creators. And that's why when I do see content creators, I try to let them know, like, I'm a fan, like, come back. Because, like, people that do post content, though, like us, well, for me, I don't have anything to watch. Like, I don't have any other content to look at besides quadrobics.
Yeah, I completely understand. It's the same for me. It's almost like I was thinking about this the other day. It's almost like the word Therian is starting to take on a new meaning.
Yeah, I could see that. If you had one wish for the Therian community, what would that be?
Um, oh gosh, that's hard. One wish for the Therian community would be to, for especially the young people, to sort of understand the nuance and the complexity of this identity, and to not sort of minimize it to just doing quadrobics and wearing a tail.
Well, yeah, I've seen it on TikTok. Yes, I'm on there, but I mostly follow like adult creators mostly. But if somebody is like, if somebody's in a live or somebody's in a TikTok and they're just doing quadruplics, maybe they have a mask on or a tail. Like this is just general stuff that happens. They go, "Are you a Therian?" When some of them, they're not a Therian, and this is okay if you're not a Therian and you just want to do quads. But people now are getting mistaken for being a Therian when they literally aren't.
Yeah, it's that's another thing.
I know some people don't shift, but if you do shift, what is your most
Um, Definitely mental shifts. I would say I would have, and unfortunately, getting older, my mental shifts have started to become less and less common, but they still do happen, and they definitely are still common for me. And they can be triggered by a huge number of things. But one of the biggest things for me, especially, is just being in a cold environment. Like I mentioned before, my stereotype is an Arctic wolf. Every time it's either snowing outside, or if it's just really cold, or even if it's just in the house, the air conditioning is on, that can help trigger a shift.
Yeah, I can see that. If you could change one thing in the alter human community, what would you do?
I would I would make this community feel more, uh, how do I say this? I would introduce to this community a stronger idea of doing more research about alter humanity, and not just theory but alter humanity in general, and using higher quality sources and higher quality information whenever you make something, say like a post or a YouTube video or anything like that.
Well, I just feel like the term is getting thrown around more, and like I just feel bad for the newer Therians because they walk into this community so confused, and I've literally seen it. People will bash somebody because they're saying something wrong, and I'm gonna say something. I have been there as a newer, younger Therian, and I have done dumb stuff. It happens, but like, just own it and take the fault and try to do better. But like, if we have more, how do I put this? If we have more information and content out there like us, then they will understand more of what a Therian is, and they won't just say, "Oh, I'm a Therian," and they would actually know what it means. is getting thrown around more, and like, I just feel bad for the newer Therians because they walk into this community so confused. And I've literally seen it. People will bash somebody because they're saying something wrong. And I'm going to say something. I have been there as a newer, younger Therian, and I have done dumb stuff. It happens, but like, just own it and take the fault and try to do better. But like, if we have more, how do I put this? If we have more information and content out there like us, then they will understand more of what a Therian is, and they won't just say, "Oh, I'm a Therian," and they would actually know what it means.
Absolutely. And I think that's another thing. The alter human community, there is, especially nowadays that TikTok is so prevalent, there is a lot more drama. There are a lot more unwarranted cancellations for basically nothing that are going around. I mean, heck, it happened to me. Um, People will make up stories or will lie about someone and use that to get someone bad attention or a bad rap in the community or even harassed in the community when it's either not true or widely exaggerated or just a personal problem. It's I think that would be something else that I would change in this community, because unfortunately I see it happen way more often than I should.
Yeah, I would agree with that because I think the last interview I had was with Jobo Gamer. And I don't think anybody knows this, but if you're watching this, I saw your comment and I deleted it. Somebody had basically, so there is someone that I personally don't agree with, and I just kind of don't agree with them. But they basically said I was copying another podcaster because I decided to have Jobo Gamer on my podcast. Um he's just a content creator. He makes alter human music. Well, he's an alter human that makes music, but not really together. But he did work with somebody, and that somebody showed up on somebody else's podcast. But at the time frame, I just wanted to interview somebody, and he was somebody that I wanted to interview. Like, I wasn't copying anybody, but if you sit here and you say something like that, it's just not cool. Like, you don't even know what's going through my mind and why I decided to have him on my podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's something you would say to newer Therians?
I made an entire video about this pretty recently. Something I would say to newer theorians is, first of all, take your time. This is not something that you need to rush figuring this out. Do as much research as possible. Also, I would say, especially for the younger Therians who genuinely, who feel like they are actually Therians, have fun, embrace it, but also remember to enjoy your youth. This identity is very complex and there are lots of parts to it. Remember to enjoy your youth, and perhaps some of these things you don't really need to be thinking about. And I'm talking about people who are maybe like 7, 8 years old, um, which I've actually seen quite a bit more often. But just remember, you have time and to take it.
I just have seen in the community, like, again, I'm gonna relate to TikTok so much because TikTok is the most craziest place in the world. But it's probably on Instagram too, but people will say they're Ethereum at a time frame, and then they will go back later a couple of years and look back at that, and they're not Ethereum. They just thought that they were. And that's actually what my parents thought. They thought it was a phase for me. I'm like, this is not a phase. Like, I feel like though for younger Therians, um, I feel like I've grown with my therianthropy. Like when I joined, I did kind of act like a child because, well, I kind of was one. I was like, I like just turned 15 when I joined into the community. Um, but nowadays, like, I just kind of move along. Like, it's not that big of a deal for me. But I feel like when you are a younger Therian, you're just a you're still just a child if you are like 7, 8, whatever age is really young. And
Yeah, definitely.
lastly, I always ask this to anybody that I have on my podcast because I just feel like it makes sense. What's one thing you would say to anybody listening to this episode right now?
One, well, for one thing, I would say follow the Alter Human Corner on Spotify.
Anything else?
Remember to take your time, remember to do research, and remember to always be asking questions.
You know, I would definitely agree with that. Um, I'm going to add to this because I just feel like I need to. What's one thing I would say to any of my fans right now? I'm a huge fan of Talviyö, and if you don't have anything you're doing right now, go watch his YouTube channel. And if you don't, I'm gonna come for you. It's not gonna be pretty. That is all for today's episode. I really enjoyed this episode
Thank you so much.
and doing this interview. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm a big fan of your channel, by the way. Like, just because there's no content out there, I'm a huge fan. Guys, like I said, make sure to check out Tavio's channel because, like I said, and I hope my fans realize, like, I'm a witch and I know some of you from my server. Like, I'm serious about that. I'll put it in the description. Just check it out, guys. Find content, be amazing because you guys are amazing. But that's all. Bye, guys.